So we finally have the early spoilers for chapter 12 of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, and it seems as if Boruto is indeed superior to Hidari, because not only was he able to block his attack in base, he was also able to send him flying using a Gale Palm. So we have a lot to discuss, but of course we're gonna start with the sneak peek. So yeah, as shown in the spoilers, Boruto was able to block Hidari's attack using his sword. And I just want to preface this by saying that this isn't just Boruto using a regular sword. This is a Kusanagi blade because he's currently using Sasuke's sword as shown in chapter 5. And as stated in Boruto's databook, Sasuke's sword was a Kusanagi blade, which means it's one of the strongest swords in the entire franchise or universe. With that said, Boruto isn't relying on this just being a Kusanagi blade because as stated in Boruto's updated database, Boruto's sword is enhanced by his own chakra, which means that Boruto, who is currently showing feats above Jigen level, is streaming that potent chakra into the sword itself, thus making it stronger. And the reason why I brought it up is because I saw some complaints on Twitter saying that this doesn't make sense because this is Ten Tails Hidari who has the power of Sasuke and 2 Renegons and blah 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 blah, so it doesn't make sense that Boruto is able to block his attack using a sword, despite seeing Code, a character who's above Jigen level as well, not being able to break the sword. So it's just a bit ridiculous, and I just wanted to address that before we move on to the next point. Now, as it relates to the Gale Palm here, I just wanted to point out that Sarada isn't in the frame, which is interesting. Now, it could be that she's just off panel, or it could also be that she's currently fighting Jura. We don't know exactly when this panel takes place, but we know that Boruto had Himawari, so it makes sense that Himawari is beside Boruto on the ground. So this is just my speculation that it could be that Sarada is currently fighting Jura, because it is possible that he teleported to that location using the claw marks. He has shown the ability to do this before, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Now, as it relates to the ability itself that Boruto is using, this is indeed the Gale Palm ability. This isn't Rasengan Uzehiko, just to clarify. So we've seen Boruto use this ability before, and even the panel itself seems to be very similar to when Boruto used Gale Palm to push away Naruto when he wanted Kawaki to end him, basically to stop Momoshiki. So this seems to be somewhat of a callback to that specific panel. Now, as it relates to the power of the ability, I want people to understand, because again, as with the sword comment, there seems to be some misunderstanding about how powers and abilities work in the Naruto franchise, so I just want to address that quickly. Now, when it comes to abilities and the potency of said ability, it all depends on the potency of the user's chakra, or let's say the power level of the user, to make it more simple. So Boruto using Gale Palm on Hidari doesn't downscale Hidari, because this Gale Palm is obviously stronger than a Gale Palm used by a weaker Boruto. So this isn't Hidari's scale into Sage Mode Naruto. It's very simple. So Boruto, of course, now being Jigen level based on the feats that we're currently seeing in Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, this means that the Gale Palm is roughly around that level as well. It depends on how much power Boruto is actually putting into the attack itself. And this actually leads into my recent video about what Sarada's Mangekyo ability will be, and also explain why she hasn't used it, which is likely because she doesn't know that she awakened it. So if you guys want to learn why that makes sense, as I went in depth on the video itself, you guys can go watch it. The video is currently on the channel. But the point is that in response to that video, I made a post on the community tab where I listed some abilities that might be beneficial to Sarada as a Mangekyo ability. These options being Amaterasu, Limbo, Time Rewind, and Koto Amatsu Kami. Now, just to clarify, I'm fully aware of the fact that Limbo isn't a Mangekyo ability, right? I know it's a Renegon ability used by Madara, but it is a possibility that Kishimoto might give it to Sarada as a Mangekyo ability if he really wants. There's no rule that says he can't do it. So it's just like a fun option that I think would be useful to Sarada. Now, that aside, I did get a comment on this post by XY Legend that says, none of those. To match the current power level of TBV or 2 Blue Vortex, normal Mangekyo Sharingan abilities are not enough. Now, this goes back to the initial point about Boruto using Gale Palm on Hidari, because sometimes we tend to forget that these powers scale to the power level of the user. These powers or abilities don't have a set power level, which means that if Sarada does go on to use Amaterasu, Time Rewind, Koto Amatsu Kami, and even Madara's Limbo ability, it wouldn't scale to Madara. Amaterasu wouldn't scale to Itachi, and Koto Amatsu Kami wouldn't scale to Shisui. These powers and abilities would scale to the current power level of Sarada. So I wouldn't discount these abilities based on power level, but if you guys have a preference to not have these abilities being 2 Blue Vortex being used by Sarada, that's totally fine, and I totally understand, because I'm personally not a fan of her having Amaterasu, because even though the fire itself might scale potency wise to a stronger character such as Sarada, that doesn't mean that it's more effective against characters who can just absorb it or negate it, you know? So we need something for Sarada that isn't easily negated or absorbed. So that's the type of ability I would want Sarada to use. Now the reason why Sarada is relevant in my opinion, and of course I might be proven wrong when the spoilers come out, is that I believe that we might see her Mangekyo Sharingan in the upcoming chapters. If not in chapter 12, it might be in chapter 13, because I believe that Boruto is going to lose. He has to. I mean, the guy's been racking up W's ever since TBV came out last year, August, and we're now in July. It's almost 1 year, guys. He has to lose at some point. He has to take a beating. He has to be humbled. That's just the hero's journey. And then Boruto is gonna train, he's gonna power up, and then he's going to defeat the villain, okay? It might sound generic, but he just can't win every fight. He has to lose at some point, or the story is gonna get boring. So I believe that this is around the time that Boruto is gonna lose. Kawaki is no match for Jura, so maybe Kawaki gets an ass whooping again, or maybe Jura just teleports to Boruto using a car mark. And then we're gonna have a 2v1 between Hidari, Jura, and Boruto is going to lose. That's when Sarada is going to awaken her Mangekyo Sharingan to protect Boruto once again, and the Mangekyo ability she receives will of course play a very important factor in that. So we'll have to see what happens. Now I did get another comment by Alexander which I find very interesting. He said, isn't Limbo a Renegon ability? Which we addressed earlier, but the most important section here is when he points out that Sarada's MS is shaped as the sun, or shaped like the sun. So of course that would have some sort of influence on what type of ability she would gain from it. Now this is somewhat plausible, but we have to remember that Itachi's Mangekyo wasn't shaped like the sun, but he had Amaterasu. So some people have made a connection that because it's shaped like the sun, she will have Amaterasu because, you know, sun, hot, fire, so Amaterasu, hot, fire, it makes sense, right? But I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. Now the sun has been used for centuries to signify multiple things, but I think one thing that people are forgetting is the ability to tell time. So it might be the case that Sarada having this design isn't meant to indicate that she'll get Amaterasu, but more so a time-based ability. And this goes back to my point in the video itself, and you guys can go watch it. I'm not going to go over everything I said, but Sarada's Mangekyo ability is going to develop based on something she desired, right? Or something she wanted to do prior, which is similar to the other Mangekyo abilities of the other users. So I drew my conclusion from the fact that she always wanted to spend time with her father Sasuke. And this was even pointed out post the Momoshiki fiasco, so this hasn't been fully resolved. So it might be a lingering feeling here that she wants to spend more time with her father, and that then manifests the ability to control time or rewind time, which is similar to Madara's ability that was used in filler or in the game. So it's not necessarily canon, which means that it can be used by Kishimoto later on without it being a problem, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, you guys need to watch the video to get the full understanding of what I said to explain why this makes sense, because it might sound like it doesn't and I'm just yapping nonsense at this point. But the video goes in depth, so you guys can go check it out after this one. Now the last comment I'm going to address is this one from Mary. So she's asking if Mangekyo abilities can be inherited by family members like both Sasuke and Itachi having Amaterasu. Now this is interesting and it's somewhat convoluted because we haven't gotten any confirmation on this, but I did go in depth in my video explaining why I think Sasuke developed Amaterasu as well, which is more so due to his rage. And then he developed Inferno style flame control, which allowed him to control that rage and direct it at the intended targets. While Itachi is a bit different because he awakened Amaterasu due to the will of fire, because as explained by Hiruzen, the will of fire is the will to protect the Leaf Village. And of course Itachi made one of the greatest sacrifices in fiction by sacrificing his entire family and clan to protect the village. So that then awakened an eternal fire in the form of Amaterasu. Now this could be wrong, but that's just my interpretation of this. But the Sasuke one is a bit unique because Itachi did literally give Sasuke Amaterasu, and some people have, you know, kind of went back and forth with it, saying that it was only temporary and that's not the reason why Sasuke actually has Amaterasu. But it could be, but it just wasn't explained by Kishimoto directly, so it's just like assumptions at this point. But either way, it is possible that it could be inherited, so maybe that's how Sarada gets Amaterasu, but of course we'll have to wait and see. With that said, let me know your thoughts guys, and let me know your predictions for chapter 12. It's gonna come out in a few days next week, so we'll see what happens. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.